Hi, welcome back, everybody. No more tap dancing, I don't think, in the agenda. This is our last session for our 2013 annual conference. I thought the mayor was very thoughtful in his comments, thoroughly enjoyed that. We have wow, we have a very distinguished panel here. I know, look really good. We have, there's a couple of creative things we did in the agenda this year, but our state CIOs on the spot is a panel that we're going to wrap up with this morning, I guess leading into lunch. So with that, I'm going to introduce Kathy Novak from Pegasus Systems, who's going to moderate us, right?
I am.
Walk us through that. Okay. Give a round of applause for our last panel, folks. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Novak, and I'm with Pegasus Systems, and it's absolutely my privilege today to introduce a very distinguished panel of state CIOs. They're also very diverse, many different backgrounds on the stage today. Some have been appointed very recently, and others have spent many years in public service. First, I want to introduce the panel, and then we're going to put them on the spot with the questions that's been submitted by NASCIO's corporate membership. There will be 3 categories of questions, and we'll provide the opportunity for the audience to ask additional questions in between each category. So first, I'd like to start with Teresa. Do I have slides?
Let's hope.
If not, I will continue. All right. So Teresa is the director and CIO for the state of Idaho. She was appointed in 2011, and she has 11 years of public sector experience behind her. She was the chief of staff and interim director for administration, as well as many years in the Idaho State Controller's office. All right. Sean Vink, there we go. Sean Vink is the CIO for the state of Illinois. He was also appointed in 2011, and he has a significant background in public sector as the chief of intergovernmental affairs, chief legislative counsel, and working as an attorney for the state. He's been with the state since 2005. Jim Smith, CIO from the state of Maine, was appointed in 2012, but he's been in the information technology field for over 30 years with holding very senior IT leadership positions at Fortune 500 companies such as American Express and Sun Life Financial. Chris Estes, CIO for the state of North Carolina, was appointed this year in 2013. And he has over 20 years of experience in manufacturing, high-tech, and financial services for companies such as PwC, IBM, Bearing Point, and most recently, Booz Allen. Tony Insinius, CIO for Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, was also appointed in 2013. He was previously the chief technology for the Commonwealth, and that's a position he held since 2008. He's also served over 20 years as a United States naval officer, with that experience being in the information technology field with Department of Defense and state government. And Karen Robinson. Karen was appointed in 2009 as the CIO for the state of Texas, and she spent over 20 years dedicating her life to public service in the state of Texas. And David Kajigal, CIO for state of Wisconsin, was also appointed in 2012, and he has 25 years of experience with executive IT positions for companies such as Alliant Energy, DeVry University, DePaul University, Maytag, and Amoco. So a very diverse panel. So let's give him a quick hand. And now if you're ready, we're actually going to put you on the spot. All right. So our first category is about vendor relationships. And the first questions that were submitted by CLC members is, what's the best way for a vendor partner to get you interested to take a meeting? And then what's the worst approach? And you may have figured this, Karen, but you're our first CIO in the spot today.
Well, I have a prop for that answer. So the easiest way to get in to see me, and a good approach is for this vendor to have read our state strategic plan. And we do it every 2 years. It identifies the top 10 priorities specifically around IT initiatives for the state. Our state agencies model their agency strategic plans for IT around this report. Our new report is coming out November 1st, and it will be available on our website. It's always a pleasure to go into a vendor meeting and have the vendor have the tagged the report and identify their solutions for possibly the top 3 initiatives or what they bring to the table.
And what's the worst approach?
I don't really have a worst approach. I know these types of events are difficult for a lot of the vendors to have one-on-ones. I really do enjoy the one-on-one meetings. I have an open door policy that when someone does request a meeting that I really do try to have that meeting. I think, gifts it's the challenges that we all face, gifts and legal ramifications, so.
Great. Thank you. Okay. And Chris, you're next on the spot.
Oh, good, thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and appreciate all the support from the vendor community, both at this session and also in our state. I guess the 2 pieces that I would suggest to the vendor community, one is kind of what Karen said to echo: do your homework, understand what we're trying to accomplish, and then come with an agenda. Oftentimes the meet and greet is valuable, but I have literally meetings back to back every day, so it's helpful if you come with an agenda with a very specific outcome. And if you've done your homework, then we can accomplish that mission and be successful, and you can get where you want to go, which is to be an advocate for your company and help us understand what you can do.
Okay, great, thank you. And Tony, you have the next question?
Sure.
All right.
I like the previous question better.
Yeah, I know, I have to read the question. You were ready to answer, though.
I was ready to answer that one.
What is your typical level of involvement in determining whether to maintain a relationship with an existing vendor or to move to a new vendor? Do you review or investigate industry reports, word of mouth, or use some other criteria?
I think it's all the above. I definitely rely on networking, on relationships like at NASCIO to talk about products and services that they get from vendors. But also, I utilize services from, Gartner and those type of organizations to help us, look at the vendor community in a particular service area, what makes sense for us. Word of mouth among the vendor community as well. I like to go out and meet with folks and just talk with folks and kind of get an understanding what their company's all about. And you can get a pretty good feel of really the culture within their company, whether or not they're going to be able to help you or not. So that's kind of how I do it.
And so what's the beginning of the question is, what's your typical level of involvement in determining whether to maintain a relationship with an existing vendor? So do you get involved with the agencies and their projects in that
Well, that's, it's a twofold question. For enterprise services, I definitely have the final say. But also, obviously, agencies that have their own particular services that they have to provide their citizens and their customers, they will have the final authority to determine what vendor makes sense. So I'm not going to tell an agency what product they need to do to satisfy their need. But if the project's over a certain threshold, it comes to my office for approval to make sure it's abiding by standards, make sure security's in place, make sure that whatever the vendor is providing them actually makes solid sense. So from that perspective, we do.
Great. Okay, Jim, same question to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very much involved in our vendor relationships, and we've created a vendor management office out of the office of the CIO, help us with these relationships. And I think that some very pertinent things have been said here, and I've had some great meetings here, so I've been very happy with that. It's been even just time you get 15 minutes to sit down and talk with someone about what's new and what's going on. I think the idea really is that idea of partnership, especially with these long-term vendor relationships. We both have to come out of this on the side of winning, right? And so we know there's going to be problems. We know there are things they're going to have to work through. So how do you keep that communication going?
Okay, great. Okay, so the next question is, what are the shortcomings that you experience for most of the vendors with whom you meet? What would you wish they knew, said, or presented to you? And David, we're going to start with you on that one.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to speak to these issues. I value the vendor, I use partnerships rather than just a vendor or supplier. They bring so much to our ability to succeed, but the partnership's got to be right. It's got a good fit. So as I look at the relationship with them, it's very important that they understand our commitment to past relationships with our partners, the architecture. We subscribe to an architecture that is reducing our expenses, limiting our skills and our talent pool to be very focused on any storage or server or network piece of equipment on the infrastructure side. So it's important that we align with that understanding, not only today, but tomorrow. So while we have a strategic plan and a roadmap, what is theirs and how is that aligned? Their product and services are going to be matched with what we're trying to achieve from a success point of view. Lastly, typically in the first few minutes, I ask them how long they've been in their job, how long have they worked for that company, and how long have they served public and government sectors. If it's 3 days, or if it's 3 months, we've got a long road to try to overcome and to dissipate that learning curve quickly, if we have the time and the mutual understanding that there's value at the end of that.
All right, so David, I would disagree with you. I've been doing technology work for government for over 20 years, and there's a point in time in January, it's 3 days with my company. So I would give everybody a chance in that regard, but thank you. Teresa?
Thanks, Kathy. Shortcomings. For me, it's really important that a vendor come to me and understand where the state is heading, what our, as Karen talked about, what our strategic plan is and what our infrastructure looks like, and then show me the bigger picture. It's really, for me personally, it's really nice to have a vendor that says, here's what you're using, and here's how my product can help you achieve efficiency or cost savings or whatever those things are. But for me, knowing Idaho, knowing our budget constraints, knowing the time constraints that we have, and being able to show me a bigger picture, the long-term picture, is very helpful to me when I meet with a vendor.
So are you saying that you believe the shortcomings are that the vendors aren't focused on Idaho's outcomes enough? That they don't bring that vision to you?
At times, yes. And it's probably not even their, maybe their even responsibility to have that knowledge. But for me, that's what I need. I need to be able to see the bigger picture, and I need them to help me see the bigger picture.
Great. Okay, Sean.
So I want to repeat a comment one of my colleagues made. I really value the relationships that our state has with the many vendors with whom we do business. Most of the men and women, almost all of them, in fact, that we deal with are people of a high character, very, very fine men and women. The shortcomings, I take a little bit of issue with the term, because I don't know that I would say it's shortcomings, but things that I wish were better, because shortcomings sounds like it's divisive, but I don't mean to be divisive. I think I would, in principle, repeat a lot of what's already been said. I understand that the role of business is to generate a profit. To do that, you need to have transactions, and so businesses are interested in selling a product. I'm rarely interested exclusively in purchasing a product. I'm interested in solving a problem. The biggest problem that I have is that agencies want to overconsume technology resources, generally on the theory that that's a solution to a problem. I don't believe that consumption of technology equals solution to a problem. So a shortcoming that I see in vendors, and perhaps this is just the nature of the beast, is their imperative to try to sell a product which is not necessarily synchronous with my objective. Another thing that I see is people misunderstand the context. I think someone said context and ground of state government, particularly procurement laws. We labor under very difficult procurement laws. So when I interact with vendors, I look for a sensitivity to A, what our operational context is, what can we do what do we need that would be helpful, but two, what are the laws that govern these interactions? And in our case, the laws are pretty tight relative to reporting vendor communications and potentially precluding vendors. And so it's difficult for me, when we do not have a contract with a vendor, to have an interaction about anything substantive that doesn't materially prejudice the vendor or myself. So I look for people to be very sensitive to that. So a typical response is to hire a lobbyist, and that can be a good and a bad thing. So those would just be a few thoughts.
Great, thank you. And now, do we have any questions from the audience around vendor relationships with their state CIOs? And I can't see a thing, so. Okay. Aldona? Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
I think my biggest issue might be around the word vendor. A vending machine is one where you put a quarter in there or $1 now and you get a can of Coke. So thank you, David, for your comments. But I think we think of ourselves, and by the way, I have served both sides, so I feel very, very free to speak. We would like to be partners, and sometimes there is an overprescribed solution that we are given. I think that maybe that is always not in the best interests of the states.
And
Because especially now with when technology is moving as quickly as it is, there may be things that are on the horizon which might help the states. But anyway, I would very much appreciate it if you would call me a private sector partner. Thank you.
Aldona, is there a specific state CIO that you would like to put on the spot to respond to that statement?
I'd be happy to respond. I know
Great,
Aldona,
David.
we
Okay.
work together at Amico. Aldona, if you remember technical evaluations and standards, Amico was strong enough, big enough to have their own R&D to be able to sort out the new technologies and advancements on their own. I've since not worked for a company that rich. I've worked for much smaller companies. We have to rely on our partnerships for their R&D efforts and for them to be able to come to us with their roadmaps, not to make the sale by the end of the quarter or by the end of the year, but to give us a longer view so that we can spend accordingly and orchestrate our plans accordingly, and to be able to digest the last product that we just bought. We've got to be able to go through that cycle with the partner and be able to rely on them. The credibility, as I spoke to earlier, the person that's visiting with me, if they have a deep understanding of the company, their product line, their roadmap, I value that as a partnership. If I'm talking to somebody that's been just with the organization a short time, doesn't understand their direction, doesn't understand their roadmap, of what value will they be to me as a customer?
David, I think that's a fair compromise. You can be on the job for 3 days, but you still have to understand your roadmap and your direction.
Can I jump in on that one a little bit?
Absolutely.
So one of the opportunities that we have with a big enterprise solution is that we'll set up a governance structure and invite the vendor partner or the solutions provider to be part of that governance structure at many of the levels, probably at all of the levels. And this is an opportunity to not only share what's working, what's not working, what could be better, but to hear from the partner what they need to be successful. Another initiative is when a solution provider comes in and wants to meet, I put it back on the table sometimes and say, what are you willing to invest? Are you willing to stand up and work on a pilot project? And once you get your foot in the door in Texas, with our agency, then you've got an opportunity with the other agencies. So there's a couple of, and then you become a better partner.
Great. And Sean?
Yeah, I had a couple thoughts. I think I hear some of the frustration in your voice, and I understand what you mean when you say, we're a private sector partner and don't overprescribe in solicitations. And that's a frustration that I share. And I think what you mean by that is that we try to do overkill in the context of what we're soliciting from the marketplace, and we actually prejudice ourselves and the vendor. And that's certainly a fair point. The only thing I would say to you is understand that the vocabulary, whether it's in the context of a solicitation or the usage of the word like vendor, a lot of what's driving that is the statutory structures that govern our operations, and you're certainly familiar with that. And so the expression of the frustration, I think, is legitimate, but understand what the right audience is for that. And we are responding to circumstances, extrinsic circumstances that we don't necessarily control. The legislature legislates, they appropriate, and we exist within those contexts. And my challenge would be, and I've said this to the vendor community in my state, is I can't bear the brunt of enacting legislation to modernize the procurement code and the purchasing policies to suit the 21st century marketplace. But I would be successful, I think, if the vendor community came together as a group and spoke with a unified voice about ethical, appropriate, effective policies to allow us to access these marketplaces. So I would simply say to keep that in mind.
Great. Okay, I'm going to move us on to the next category, which is CIO Success. So the first question is, what do you believe is the single, as in one, most critical factor for you to be successful in your role? And David, we're going to start with you.
All right, thank you. Collaboration, even more so than innovation. I don't know that we can get much done without our relationships with our customers and our partners. If you can't orchestrate that, I don't think you have a chance of succeeding. So I would say collaboration is extremely important, and the technology that facilitates the collaboration. Office productivity and being able to communicate in a way that's very effective and efficient, in a very timely manner. Many of us who work for the government now, for the state, there's a long process. There's a long process of passing paper from one station to the next to the next. If we could facilitate automatic workflow processes along with the relationships that we're going to build both with customers and agencies and departments and the partners that we just spoke about.
I really like that answer. Very excellent answer. And Chris, what do you believe is your single most critical factor for you to be successful?
People. So technology doesn't work without people, whether those are the people in this room that are partners with us in the state, or whether the people work for the state as employees, or whether the people who engage our interfaces and the various systems that we bring, whether they're mobile apps or websites, and ultimately the people in the legislature who fund and appropriate money that allows us to be successful. So it's all about people.
People in collaboration, I like that. That's excellent. Okay, the next question. Do you believe that both applications and infrastructure should be centralized, or only common infrastructure items, and why? And Tony, you get your first shot at that one.
That's a good question. I definitely believe, and if you read my new strategic plan and you understand that there's a huge RFP for Commonwealth, Pennsylvania that's on the street, we are getting out of the infrastructure business. We are getting out of the infrastructure and storage business, and we're definitely going to, we're going to go to the cloud to procure those services as a commodity, as a utility. Application development, on the other hand, I feel is more in line to keeping with individual agencies because they know their business. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the agencies utilize, vendors, to do the work on behalf, but the core knowledge of the business still resides within the agency. So I like to separate those two, and we're doing that currently in Pennsylvania.
Excellent. And Karen?
I knew you were going to pick on me on that one. So we have a pretty decentralized system, and while I may believe one thing, the flow is in the other direction. I'd like to study more on centralizing. We've got so many different programs going on right now that centralizing. If I had any of my agency staff here, they would be pushing against it. So I think once I build the relationships, get the trust, then I think we can move in that direction. But I have to have the support from the governor's office.
Is there an area that you feel, let's say, is ripe to attack, to centralize, next on the agenda?
Yeah, I mean, data center consolidation is a tremendous opportunity. We didn't do it well the first time around. We're doing it much better now. And we're starting to gain the trust not only of our state agency customers, but the local governments.
Great. So. And Tony, how about you? Is there a specific area? I
think there's several areas. I mean, obviously the infrastructure piece, the data center piece. Commonwealth, Pennsylvania is centralized email across the board. They have been for almost a decade now. One of the first states to do that. We got 90,000 inboxes. That is crucial. I mean, that has paid so many dividends. I can't even tell you. Centralized telecom services from one vendor, one throat to choke, all across the state, both from a voice perspective and a data perspective. Those type of things are really critical if you want to actually implement significant change across the enterprise. You need to have that centralization in those certain areas. Other things like application development, to me, again, I don't believe that should be a centralized function, but the rest, I think there's a lot of fair game things. It's hard. It's very hard. I was very fortunate that when I came as CTO in 2008 and now CIO, that we were centralized on email, and we also have an enterprise ERP solution that's centralized across the Commonwealth as well. I mean, you get email, centralized ERP, you can do a lot of good things.
Excellent.
Kathy, can I just add I agree exactly with everything Tony said. Many of us are consolidating our data centers. We are inheriting a very diverse set of architectures. Not any two are the same. So this is an excellent partnership opportunity for them to come in and help us sort that out. What's the merit of what we've inherited or what we have to be able to make that work seamlessly as a private cloud provider to our departments and agencies.
And
Your comment?
sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Kathy, I think I'd take this a little further because I heard a couple of the panelists say they wouldn't consolidate applications. In Maine, we've been fully consolidated on the infrastructure and the application side for many years. And I think you do need to consolidate applications. And I understand that Maine is small. We got 1.3 million people, so it's, you know, we got about as many moose as people. So it's a little easier to do than, you know, some of your agencies obviously are bigger than our population there. But the thing is, when you, every decision that's made in an agency, every time someone picks a technology, that's a strategic decision. And if down the road people make multiple different decisions, then sometime you're going to have to come to terms with that. We have multiple imaging systems, we have multiple licensing systems. I mean, I really think about shared services, and I think that the important thing is to get the agencies to understand they're doing a lot of the same things. They're taking data in, they're processing it, they're putting information out. And I think the way we will get more effective, more efficient, and more cost efficient is to do it in a shared services mode. And like I say, it's probably easier in Maine than some of the other areas.
Now, one comment I would like to make from the vendor partner community is that we've been talking about centralization of infrastructure for many years. And state CIOs, the average tenure is most likely not as long as we stay with our company. So we have a lot of lessons learned and best practices that we would love to bring to you and share with you in that area. Okay, I am going to go on to the next question and have fun with this, okay? What do you enjoy most about your role as state CIO, and what do you dislike the most? And Teresa, we're going to start with you.
What do I enjoy most? I absolutely love the people I work with. I have a terrific job. I have a terrific team. I'm very, very lucky. I have a great CTO who's out there somewhere who is really the brains behind the operation, so I'm very lucky to have him. I enjoy the challenge very much. I don't come from an IT background, so I'm constantly reading and meeting with people and trying to, I'm never ahead, but I try to keep up. So that's interesting. On the flip side, it's sort of those same things. The relationships are hard sometimes. Dealing with turf wars and the past sins, if you will, of other CIOs that other agency directors can't seem to forget. So those types of things, but generally, I enjoy everything that I do, and the people for sure is the best part of the job.
Yeah. And I think in the private sector that we don't have a great look in at what happens in those dynamics, and I don't think we have a great appreciation for what you have to deal with on that, right? And Jim, how about you? What do you enjoy most about your role as state CIO, and what do you dislike the most?
Well, I think what I enjoy most is the opportunity. There's a lot of areas where we can bring new practices, new thought processes, new approaches. And what I love is the people I work with, both in the agencies and the governor's office, people are very open to ideas. They're very open to how do we think about technology? How do we move forward? I mean, it was just, I think we heard a lot of that when the mayor was speaking today about the idea that technology can help us move forward. And I just find people very, very open to those conversations. People appreciate your, you know, if you have a history of coming from the private industry, I think they really appreciate that. And least is, can I say this? I don't really like testifying before the legislature.
No.
Can we keep that in this room?
I agree with that.
Okay. The last question in the category of CIO Success, and Sean, I'm going to start with you. You are currently a state CIO. What is your ultimate career goal? Where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years?
Oh boy, that really is putting me on the spot. Well, so where do I ultimately want to be? Where do I want to be in 5 years, and where do I want to be in 10 years? So I think those would probably all be three different questions. I think that the answer to the question is I'd like to do one of two things in the next 5 years. My boss is up for re-election in 2014 if we're lucky enough to win. Hopefully he'll continue to employ me for another term, and so that means I'm looking for a job in 19. I went to school and I got my undergraduate degree in humanities, and then I have a law degree, and then I have a master's degree in political science. And my father told me when I started college, he said, you're a generalist, you're marginally talented. Why don't you just take some business classes, some accounting? You'll probably end up being a consultant. And so I studied a lot of medieval philosophy and law as a result. And so I find myself in the governor's office dealing with budgets and management and that kind of things. So I called him and I said, geez, I should have listened to you, but I didn't realize that I would find an interest in managing organizations and people and managing budgets and thinking about how technology can improve enterprises. So I think what I'd like to do in 5 years is to be involved in some executive capacity in running an enterprise, a dynamic enterprise, and working with a team of people to come up with innovative solutions, to sell them, and to experience economic success. 10 years down the road, I hope that maybe I would continue in that. Another option for me would be to practice law. And then ultimately, I would like to be the owner of a professional sports franchise. That's the ultimate objective.
Oh, my God.
Excellent. Excellent. That's great. And Karen?
Oh, my. I'm probably the oldest one up here, so I'm going to be a full-time KK. I've got 6 grandkids. That's kind of blended, but I love them all. And 2 years, I'm going to serve on the executive committee for NASCIO. Thank you very much for that opportunity. I'm going to be a dedicated servant and continue to meet these great people. Hopefully we'll maintain some consistency with our members, our CIO members, because I absolutely love these relationships. And 2 to 5 years, that's it, and then I'm done. I'm out of here.
Fair enough. And Tony?
You're lucky.
I know.
Yeah.
I got a family.
It's an interesting question because I've always had a 5-year plan wherever I went. And 5 years ago, if you had told me I was going to be CIO of Pennsylvania, I would have looked at you and said, what are you drinking? But I absolutely love technology. I love the integration of technology in business and everyday life and how it can help folks. So we all know on this panel that this is a temporary job, between 4 and 8 years. So you got to plan, you got to think about it, and I have. Ultimately, I'd like to be the CIO for the PGA or the NFL, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But either doing something similar in the private sector, I've never tested the waters in the private sector, or maybe going out and doing my own thing.
I think you do well.
You do great.
Thanks.
Great. Any questions from the audience about CIO Success? Anybody want to put one of our state CIOs on the spot?
There's a question.
Okay. That's Josh.
Thanks, guys. Josh Nisbet with CGI. And my question is this. I want to learn more about what you think your role is when it comes to working with and managing various stakeholders at various levels of government. So quite often you have a federal funding source and certification body. You have a state administration of those kinds of resources and the work that you do at the state level. And then you're dealing with, quite often, localities or cities and counties who are then administering those services and quite often are drivers to requirements, things of that nature. So in that realm of various levels of government and administration, how do you find or what do you see your role is in negotiating and maneuvering through the technical nature of those relationships?
And you must also select a CIO to put on the spot.
I think I'm going to go with, Tony was singing he was throwing down some Garth Brooks last night that was just off the hook. So we'll start with Tony.
I'm glad I didn't go.
I don't know how to take that. Good question. I often find myself, it's like either herding cats or running an adult daycare center sometimes. But I think, and seriously, you need to be a facilitator and really understand really the needs from all the stakeholders, from the local government all the way up to the legislation. You really need to understand and kind of figure out what's the best interest, for my case, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, what makes sense for Pennsylvania. Understand individual needs and wants and desires and come to compromise. You have to come to compromise. Nobody's going to get everything they want, not including myself. So when you realize that, you can get a lot of stuff done, give a little here, give a little there, give a little there, and everybody at the end of the day comes to consensus. Yep, this is a great thing. We won some, and Pennsylvania wins, ultimately wins. That's how I see it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Then we're going to move on. Oh, is there one?
No, that was just Mitch.
Totally
Just me.
blinded up here.
Just
No?
Mitch.
No.
Okay. So moving on to government transformation in our last category. The first question is, there's a lot of discussion going on right now regarding smart cities and the Internet of Everything. How do you see these topics impacting the role of the state CIO? And Sean, being Chicago located in Illinois, I thought I'd start with you on that question.
You're referencing Chicago as a smart city?
I'm not saying anything.
I'll try to give you some thoughts. It's an interesting subject. I clearly agree that technology is providing the platform and is accelerating a profound and fundamental shift in the way in which government relates to its citizens. I think that this is happening on a number of levels, but since we're in an audience of vendors, the way I think about it is government's really moving from a model of bureaucratic administration of programs and services run by state employees or people contracted by the state to a model which is government as market participant. And so in that sort of hypothetical or that theoretical model, technology is providing the platform for the new method of government interacting with the private sector, and I think that will largely be government as market participant. So government uses technology as a platform to facilitate that interaction and also as a platform to affect its own internal transformation. Nature of society is changing. Demands of population are more complex, more dynamic. There's simply a higher volume. And so we have to recalibrate government institutions to do what they can do effectively, and then find ways, as someone said earlier, to partner with the private sector. So I guess my thought is that the role of the state CIO, and this is actually related to the question that you just asked about, where there are multiple stakeholders, and the question was asked in the context of governments. But I think the same kind of question could be asked about, for example, how do we deliver health care in the state of Illinois? Well, that's not really that's a multi-stakeholder discussion. It includes everybody from the Archdiocese of Chicago to the medical society to all the insurance companies, the Medicaid program, you name it. And so what the state CIO's role, in my opinion, would be to be the bringer of clarity, to bring all of the right people in the room, identify the critical issues, and then to help them think about the ways in which technology can bring about a solution to the problems that they're trying to face. And the observation would be that the CIO is kind of like Switzerland. The state CIO is somebody who can talk effectively, I think, to both sides of the political spectrum and be a non-threatening person for all the stakeholders. In politics, the question is the distribution of resources. The state CIO is not going to have a role in determining who gets what necessarily, but can have a role in thinking about the most efficient way to implement those policy decisions.
Sean, I enjoyed that answer. Completely enjoyed that answer. That is great. And Chris, same question to you. There's a lot of discussion going on right now regarding smart cities and the Internet of Everything. How do you see these topics impacting the role of the state CIO?
It's a great question. I actually have been working in this space in customer interface for the last 20 years. And so when I think about this, I think about the social enterprise that many of you may or may not be up to speed on, and how basically the state and government really exists for the people, right? If we go back to the fundamental of our Constitution, government exists for the people. So the question is, how do you engage the people in government? And I think the answer has to do with some work I've done in the past that I've called the M2M framework. It's many-to-many framework. So it's the many of the enterprise collaborating and communicating together to meet the needs of many in the marketplace. So in our case, the marketplace is made up of our citizens and the businesses that drive our economy, and the many in government are the enterprise of government. And the two kind of sitting in the middle is really the technology and the architecture that enables that collaboration and communication between the many in the enterprise and the many in the marketplace. So it would tie very nicely to some of the social enterprise work. If you want to Google that, you'll have plenty to read.
It'll be interesting to watch, that's for sure, the evolution of this. Okay, so the final question is, what do you believe is the most important area to change for government to be able to really innovate and transform the way it does business? And Jim, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you, Kathy. I carry around a picture on my iPhone that I took early one morning when I was at work, and I was watching someone from the HR department going over at 6:30 in the morning with paper in their hands and going to a file cabinet and filing paper. And I shook my head and said, why are we doing that? And I've only been there a year or so, so you just start to learn how many manual processes we have, how many paper-intensive processes we have. And when I came in and I started from a private industry background, started talking about business process management and workflow and those type of things, people really hadn't thought about that. People weren't knowledgeable about that. One of my other hats, I'm also in charge of facilities, and we have problems where we have buildings that have too much paper and can't hold the weight anymore. And you just scratch your head and say, why are people still using paper? And so I think one of the things, a legacy I would like to leave is to that transformation where you said, there's another way to do workflow, there's another way to bring efficiency, we can do it through software now. And I think we can revolutionize what we're doing right now by starting to use software and the tools that are available.
Excellent, thanks, Jim. And David?
I would start with a cultural assessment and ask whether we really want to innovate as a first position. And I think many of you know that most entities have 4 generations working there. And the older generation will cycle out and will retire and leave the workforce. It's the next generation that will be a little bit more demanding about innovation and improvements, asking the questions, why are we doing it this way? So as CIOs, we need to be prepared and address the needs of all 4 generations simultaneously. So I think it's very important that you understand, in my case, 50 plus departments and agencies, and they're not all the same. They all have different cultures. They'll all address innovation in their own way. So as a provider of product and services to so many diverse populations, understanding where you're going to get traction immediately, go there, and then schedule your appointments and your activities and your plans accordingly. You don't want to start at the back end and fail and fail and fail. You need to put some points up on the board. You need to make sure that you're capable of addressing innovation. You're listening, and you're going to be improving state operations and government for the state, in our case, Wisconsinites.
Excellent, thank you. And Teresa, how about you?
For Idaho, I think for us to move forward, we have to continue to work to change the mindset of our policymakers. We are a balanced budget state, so we don't spend a dime that we don't already have in the bank. And so consequently, every budgetary request is a fight. We fought for 3 years to get $1.5 million to replace some older equipment. And it's really hard to get our policymakers to look past the price tag and to look past the long-term gains you receive through technology. It's very difficult for them to see more than a $3 million, a $5 million, $10 million price tag, to see the efficiencies that you gain, to see the time savings and the long-term goals that it lets you reach. So for us, being a little more forward-thinking, being able to see the bigger picture and what technology is much more than email. And that's very hard for some of our policymakers to see until their email goes down. And then it's a big deal. But past that, it's difficult where we're at to get them to wrap their heads around the long-term plan.
So if I could paraphrase that, you believe that government innovation and transformation is going to start with the education of the elected officials.
Absolutely, yes.
Right to you.
Yeah.
Agreement. Karen, anything to add? I see you shaking your head there.
Yeah, I totally agree with Teresa that one thing that we had this last session was we finally had a technology committee. And what was amazing was they were engaged. It was the first hearing that I've ever been to where the chairman said, if you had 3 wishes, what would you like? And I turned around to my staff and I said, are you kidding me? This is awesome. I said, can I have 5 wishes? And I just named them off. And from there, we had a committee that actually supported us in our missions. And we've gotten a lot of new members this last couple of rounds, and a lot more of them are very interested in what we're doing. They've gone on tours of the data center. We've really engaged them and educated them on some of the solutions. And that's where I'm learning is I don't want to scare them with all the negative, what could happen, and use other states as an example. I want to talk to them about what is positive. And when I go into those meetings, I call it their district sales map, what their local governments are buying off of our contracts, what they're purchasing. And I have metrics and scales, and that's their leave behind, and they all grab it and they oh my gosh, this school district, big or small, is buying 50% of their stuff, computers and our network, and then I have to explain, well, what this all means, and then that we get a fee from that. So really engaging with the legislators has really helped us.
Well, let me follow up with one question. As your business partners, how can we help you educate your elected officials on the importance of technology, on what the Internet of Everything is really going to mean, how we need to transform government to better meet the demands of the next generation of constituent? Who'd like to, Tony, please?
That's a good question, because everybody that is a business partner has a lobbyist or some sort that communicates daily at the legislation level. Instead of communicating negative things or they're not doing this, they're not doing that, how about communicating what we're doing and actually providing support of what we're doing, and here's where they actually can do do better things, and that all stems by original conversations. Is read our strategic plan, know where we're going, understand our core values, understand our procurement processes. I mean, Pennsylvania, my first question when vendor comes talk to me is, I said, are you on our ITQ, which is the invitation to qualify? If you're not, I can't do business with you, so why are you coming? Get on that thing. Get on that thing, and then come here, and don't ask the question, because I wanted to answer this question, I'm going to answer it now. Don't come and sit down at my table and say, what can I do for you? I can't entertain that question. I'll literally get up and walk out.
Yep.
So that's why I think how the vendor community can leverage their lobbyists and actually help us help you, because you need to get that ear of the legislation.
So Tony, that was a great answer, but it did sound like you were putting us on the spot a little bit.
Well, it's fair play,
And so
right?
we're supposed to turn this around. 5 minutes left, your final opportunity to put your favorite state CIO on the spot. Ooh, we have volunteers lining up. Here we go.
I can't see any.
Kyle Schaefer. In your organization, what is that one area that you think you have a void, either from a technology or skill set perspective, that the vendor community can help you out with? So just that one void that we could be of value and benefit.
And which CIO would you like to put on the spot with that
I would
question?
just start with Teresa and just work your way down.
Oh, no, you have to name one to start. Is it Teresa?
Let's go with Teresa, then Chris, then Tony.
What is the one void? Ooh, that's a good one. I think, and it's not necessarily a product that the vendors could provide, but a common message that is consistent with what our state goals are. If you want to be a partner vendor, and if you want to be a partner rather than a vendor, then we all need to be headed in the same direction. And so I think having the same message, whether you're visiting with health and welfare or corrections or whoever it is that you're out there dealing with on a day-to-day basis, that your message is one of consistency for the state. Rather than dividing and conquer, help us bring everybody together in a collaborative movement forward, and help us achieve our goals. And that creates the partner relationship for us rather than the vendor relationship. Sean?
Am I next?
Is that First of all, are there any other questions? We're coming close to time. I'd like to save a little bit of time for final comments.
I'll be very brief then. I concur with a lot of what everybody said. I think Avoid is in our infrastructure bureau. We're focused on running a data center. We need to be focused on delivering solutions. The vendor community can help. And I'm going to disagree respectfully with some of my colleagues. They can help by educating executive and legislative leadership about technology problems, the risks that we face with the current paradigm, and then bringing in best practices from successful technology companies as models for us to adopt to appropriately incent workforces and repurpose institutions and agencies to deliver the state's business.
Any other questions from the audience?
Yes, one question. First generation of students is about to graduate from colleges that hasn't used the PC as a primary computing platform. Overwhelmingly, they're saying that email is one form of electronic communication they can live without. So how is your organization, some of which are fairly large, preparing for this new crop of intellectuals coming in that will invariably bring bulk of innovation that all of us will enjoy?
And which CIO would you like to put on the spot with that question?
Anybody who would like to respond?
Ask a question, name a CIO.
I'll jump in.
Thanks, Chris.
So I think that ties to my earlier comment. You mentioned a one-to-one communication and that we're moving to a many-to-many communication. So as you move to a many-to-many communication, the tools that we use, the collaboration tools, social media becomes a really important aspect. The generation that you're referring to is kind of the social media generation. And so they're expecting to be able to use Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter at work doing their job. We find that many of our elected officials are starting to use Facebook as a common tool to connect with their citizens, use the surveying tools that are in that. So we're starting to tiptoe into it. In the central IT organization, we have over 500 people. 16 of them are under the age of 35. 13 of them, 3 of them age out this year, so we'll only have 13 people under the age of 35. So we've actually we're finalizing and signing a MOU with the universities to specifically start bringing in students into our workforce. We opened a new innovation center last Thursday. You're welcome to go out and look at the North Carolina Innovation Center, and you can see how we're starting to use innovation to bring in the young talent. Back to the comments earlier, there are 4 generations of a workforce in our environment, so we can't really focus on just one. We have to focus on creating a work environment that accounts for all 4 generations, recognizing they all have different expectations, different tool requirements. So it's a very complex environment. We have to manage both a legacy one-to-one environment and create and contemplate a many-to-many environment simultaneously.
Great. And Jim?
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I would like to add that, in Maine, we're doing a lot of the similar things, and we're really looking at that workforce. What's the workforce of the future? We have 20% of our IT workforce going to retire in the next couple of years, so that's very, very, that's an organizational change that we have to deal with. And so we're looking at how do we encourage young people to come in, and we're working with the universities to create a partnership we call it Project Login. We're going to try to double the number of IT grads out of Maine through the next 4 years, and that's reaching into the grammar schools, the high schools, the elementary schools. But part of our workforce strategy here is we really think that the state worker is going to change, at least from an IT perspective. We really believe that the day of a state worker being a 30 or 40-year veteran is probably changing. We probably think we're going to be able to encourage young students to come in and recent graduates to come in because we have very, very interesting work, but we don't think we'll keep them through their whole career. And so that, we really have to think about it organizationally. You're dealing with a different workforce, or we will be, if a workforce only lasts X number of years. How do you get them up to speed quicker? How do you get the most out of them? How do you do the knowledge transfer? So given a lot of thought in that, and I think it's a great question.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you very much to be the very first volunteers of the State CIOs on the Spot. I hope this is a panel that we can continue, and I hope that many other state CIOs volunteer for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, panel members, and Kathy, great job. Thank y'all. Another hand. Good job. That session ended right on the mark. So, no. Okay, folks. If you are staying for the lunch, it's set to begin at 12:15 in Ballroom D. However, Doug mentioned we're probably going to be ready a little earlier for you. So it's right at 12. You can head right on over. So let me just say a couple of things, and we'll get you out of here. Thank you so much for being here and hanging in today. And being very patient with us this morning with some of the flip-flops in our agenda. Certainly look forward to working with you. Mid-year's coming up. I mentioned the Hilton Camden Yards, which is a great venue, so please plan on attending. In the meantime, of course, stay up to date at the NASCIO site through the community and of information and other work products that will be coming out. So let me take just another minute and thank some folks. First, to our valuable private sector partners and our CLC. We could not do this without you, and that partnership is strong, and we want it to continue to be. Thanks, of course, to the entire CIO community, 50 states represented, over 600 attending. Doug mentioned that when we do the true up on the numbers, that it could be our largest annual conference ever. So that's pretty incredible. Thanks to the NASCIO Executive Committee. We do, those folks do come in a little bit earlier and do sit in meetings and that kind of thing, and the officers from the previous year and our incoming group as well. Special shout out to the Programs Committee to put on this event that gets together, headed up by Allison. Allison showed up and helped me to double tape sticky things in my binder this morning with all the changes going on. I was very appreciative of that. And of course, the NASCIO staff themselves. This stuff doesn't happen. It's not pixie dust. There's a lot of thought and effort put into it. So I wanted to say thank you to all those folks. So lunch is next, and I think that officially closes out our conference. Look very much forward to seeing you in Baltimore. Thank you all so much.